Hello. Welcome to the shift, day 2. How exciting. Hopefully, you had a wonderful day of training yesterday. And while we're talking about yesterday's trainings, drop in the chat which one you thought was the most useful or most helpful for you, or which one did you enjoy the most? Because I'm hoping that you're not just coming and watching one speaker, you're watching many speakers. And so let me know which, training did you like the most? Thank you for sharing that. And if you attended my trainings yesterday, welcome back to today's training. Today, it is the self-care solution. So let me know if you are new today or you attended my training yesterday. Also include in that chat, if you attended my training yesterday, or maybe you watched the replay later on, did you try the technique that we talked about yesterday? Did you try it again maybe today? Because even though I kind of guided you through the woods, it is something that you can use anytime. All you have to do is visualize, tap into those senses, and you know, watch or feel those thoughts kind of flow down the river, and not judge them. So that's one way to let go of those overthinking thoughts. And today we're going to talk about self-care. I'm Stacy Johnson, and I'm a women empowerment coach, a resilience mentor, and I've been a therapist for 25 years. And so I have a lot of experience helping clients, with all these things. But even though I was a therapist and I was trained, I also struggled. I shared yesterday how I struggled with overthinking. And not too long ago, I really truly thought that self-care meant, getting my hair done, getting a massage, getting my nails done. And I just never put the time into my own self. I always gave to other people. We talked yesterday about that CEO manager of our households. And that's, I was always taking care of other people and I didn't really take care of myself. So that's, we're going to be here today to talk about self-care. We're going to talk about how overthinking, can get in the way of self-care. And, yesterday we talked about overthinking causes that dysregulated nervous system and increases stress from triggering the amygdala. And so today we're going to discuss how overthinking impacts self-care, what self-care is, why we ignore self-care, the key areas of self-care, and how to build a self-care plan that you can be using every day. And it doesn't cost you a dime. So in the chat, let me know, when was the last time you truly prioritized self-care? And what did you do for self-care? Again, thank you for sharing. I really do like the engagement in the chat. It's just another, the chat feature is a way that we can engage during these trainings. So I really do appreciate when you engage in the chat. So let's start with, what is self-care? Self-care is that intentional actions or things that we do to engage in to promote our overall well-being. It prioritizes our needs and we take proactive steps to maintain the balance in all areas of our life. A lot of times when I work with clients, when we get to this area in my program, I get things like, I don't have time for self-care, or it costs too much money. Or the best one that I've heard is, I feel guilty if I practice self-care. What? Feel guilty? But of course, that's kind of where I was too, not too long ago, was if I would take time out of, the day or the weekend doing something for myself, I felt guilty that I wasn't doing something for my family. So even though it was shocking when I heard it from other people, I also probably thought that. So put a yes in the chat if any of those kind of myths or those beliefs come up for you as well when you think of self-care. Why is self-care so important? Self-care is essential for maintaining a sense of balance. It allows us to feel recharged. It replenishes our energy level, and it prevents burnout. By investing in self-care, we have a deeper sense of self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-acceptance, which leads to overall satisfaction and healthy well-being. So yesterday we talked about overthinking, and we're going to take a look now how overthinking can impact self-care, because overthinkers tend to put themselves last. We talked about that yesterday with the CEO manager and how, especially women, we have that caretaking, innate nature, so from earlier times, women have always kind of prioritized other people's needs over their own. And overthinkers, like I said earlier, we just talked about this, feel more guilty. And their internal messages, we talked about those yesterday, the internal thoughts or, conversations that we have in our head. And so overthinkers, when they think about self-care, they hear self-care is unproductive or selfish. They tend to use, overthinkers tend to use distraction instead of real rest. So they usually scroll, more, through social media. They binge watch TV and they ignore their body's signals and they keep pushing through stress. We talked a little bit yesterday about that stress response and then also how our nervous system gets dysregulated. And we talked about some of the physical symptoms that our body can feel, when we're overthinking and that stress hormone gets triggered. We ignore those signals. And those should be signals to us that we should be doing something for ourselves. But a lot of times that gets ignored and we just keep pushing through. And then we find ourselves completely exhausted. And that's when we think, I need to do something. But it may be too late. You're just so exhausted. Now you can't engage in something that you enjoy. So put in the chat if you've used distractions instead of real rest. And which one do you relate to the most? I used to think I can just keep pushing through. I actually said to myself at one time, when my kids were, younger, we'll say pre-teen, and definitely before they drove themselves to their own activities, I thought, I'll just wait till they graduate. When they graduate high school, they'll be on their own, and then that's when I can take care of myself. That's when I'll prioritize myself. What was I thinking? Because that was, years. I mean, if I really thought about it, it probably was when my kids were like 6 and 8. So I would have had, many more years before I could concentrate on myself. But I just did. I kept pushing myself. So why do we ignore self-care? Well, we're conditioned, especially with society. It's saying that being productive equals worth. And self-care, when you prioritize yourself, you're not being productive. And also we have those internal messages, like I said, and we hear things like, you should be doing more. And again, that falls into that overthinking loop. Again, I know that like if I decided that I wanted to spend some time on a weekend, maybe just sit on the couch, read a book, the internal message I heard was, you should be getting up to clean the house, or you should be doing this. So I would, so those internal messages can be very powerful. And like I talked about yesterday, part of my Anchor Resilience program, we go into depth in how to change those faulty beliefs. Thinking self-care requires hours and it'll cost too much. That's another reason why people ignore self-care. They think it's just, I have to plan it so far out, massages or hair or nails, or it's going to cost me too much. I just can't invest in it. And these are all myths. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes that it costs nothing to implement a self-care plan. And you can implement it right into your daily routine. So if we ignore self-care and don't practice daily self-care, what kind of things can we face? Well, we can be facing constant fatigue and burnout. We feel constantly exhausted even when we're sleeping. We feel emotionally drained and unmotivated. It increases stress and anxiety. The nervous system stays in that fight or flight, making it hard to relax. So not just when we talked yesterday, how the overthinking and we can do things to maybe stop that. Well, if our system is already in the fight or flight, no, not just affirmations or stopping the overthinking is going to help. We have to do things as well. So there's a combination of, that's why I decided to combine these two topics, because you have to do both to get your system back in regulation. Overthinking and worry become overwhelming. Irritability and mood swings increase due to mental overload. We can have a decline in our physical health. We can have a weakened immune system, leading to frequent colds and illnesses. We can have digestive issues, headaches, muscle tension. I know, again, when my system was dysregulated for a while and I was ignoring that self-care, I spent probably 2 months worth of copays going to a physical therapist because I had a neck strain. And I thought it was because I had slept wrong or I worked in a alternative school. So there were times when there was crises at school and we were involved in physical, restraints of students. Unfortunately, that was part of my job. And so I thought maybe I tweaked something. So I spent like 2 months in physical therapy and it got a little better. But ultimately the doctor was like, you're in stress mode, like you're in overload and you need to figure that out, because not just these muscle activities that I'm giving you are going to help. So those are a lot of things that we can suffer from if we're not dealing with some of these stress symptoms. And self-care is truly a way to help that stress. Some other things that we can deal with is higher risk of high blood pressure and heart disease. I don't want those. Do you? We can also have struggled relationships. We feel disconnected from loved ones due to exhaustion and stress. We have lack of patience, which leads to more arguments and frustration. We neglect our personal time, making our relationships feel like they are just transactional and not and they don't feel like they're fulfilling us. We have decreased productivity and focus. We may suffer from brain fog, making it harder to concentrate. Procrastination. That we may start to, that overthinking we talked about yesterday about overthinking can cause procrastination. And procrastinate, when we're ignoring that self-care, procrastination also happens. And that increases due to our lack of mental energy. Simple decisions feel overwhelming, leading to decision paralysis. We may even suffer from a lowered self-esteem and confidence. Negative self-talk increases, which leads to feeling guilty, and we have an increased self-doubt. We feel unworthy. We have lack of boundaries, resulting in overextending and people-pleasing. I know that was something that I struggled with, and I know a lot of my other clients They feel that they always say yes because they're worried that the other people aren't going to like them or they're going to be mad at them if they don't say yes. So that's ignoring our own self-care when we like say yes to everything. So put in the chat, where do you see yourself experiencing any of the problems that I just discussed? If you ignored your self-care, what problems have you faced? Again, thank you for sharing. So now let's talk about the components of self-care. There are different components of self-care, and I have created a self-care checklist that the clients in the Inca Resilience will complete. And then that gives us an idea of where we go, like what areas of our life are struggling with self-care. And that helps us develop their self-care, like resilience roadmap that, creates that we can help them create. So the first one is physical health, which is the form of self-care that helps improve our quality of life and prevents chronic conditions like heart disease or, all the muscle tensions, those chronic conditions that we might be feeling all the time. And, when people think of physical health, they think obviously regular exercise, so then they're thinking, well, I have to join a gym, which is not the truth. This area also includes proper sleep, nutrition, of course, exercise, but along with all that is scheduling our routine doctor visits, just having doctor visit checkups. Now, of course, that's going to cost your copay, but the other areas aren't going to cost you anything really. Proper sleep, if we learn how to get, if you are one that you're overthinking impacts your sleep, you know, learning that sleep routine and learning how to manage those overthinking thoughts will get you better sleep. Nutrition, you know, eating healthier and staying hydrated. A lot of people ignore the water intake, and staying hydrated during the day is also proper self-care. Emotional self-care, this is designed to help us have a healthy brain. So practicing brain stimulating exercises, word searches, those kind of things. And also this area is the area that helps manage our emotions. Like, when we've talked about the emotional pieces, so regulating our emotions, identifying our feelings. But then also this could be involved, in getting involved in something new, like maybe taking a new class, being involved in music. This is muscle relaxation, like yoga, mindfulness. So the exercise that I shared with you yesterday, using the mindfulness, acknowledging our emotions and processing them. And then there's mental self-care. And this is about fostering growth mindset, setting boundaries, engaging in hobbies, things that bring you joy. And this can include practicing positive affirmations, finding things that you enjoy. There's a lot of times that I'll dance in my kitchen while I'm cooking dinner. That didn't cost me anything. And then we have the social self-care. And people don't realize that, having a phone call, a conversation, and an actual conversation, not texting, but having that human connection. And this is probably an area that maybe has been ignored more since COVID, because everybody got in the habit of doing more isolating activities, that this area may have been suffering more from individuals. But that social self-care is having, that human connection with others, and also our boundaries. So being able to say no and not feeling guilty. But this can involve planned activities. It can be volunteering with others. It could just be a simple phone call, maybe on your way home from work. And then spiritual self-care. And this does not have to be, going to church. This has nothing to do with religion. Spiritual self-care is related to finding that purpose and meaning, connecting with something greater than you. Now, this could include meditation, hiking mindfully in nature, connecting to your higher self. All those kind of things are in this area. And it also can include church or religion practices, but it doesn't have to be. So put in the chat if you were surprised that none of these components that I talked about included scheduling routine massages or nail appointments. And as you can see, none of these cost too much money, and none of them have to take long. Clients that are inside the Anchor Resilience, we talked about that they develop this personalized self-care plan based on my self-care checklist. And the self-care checklist goes through all those components. And then we develop a plan. And the plan, when we're practicing self-care, right now, when we talk about some of these things, they can be done anywhere. So even if you're going on vacation, some of the things that I talked about can be put into your daily routine without too much effort. And the other thing about self-care is consistency. And so getting into a routine that works for you and recognizing that you're human and give yourself grace. So if one day, once a self-care plan is created for you, and one day you miss something, maybe you have on your plan that certain days of the week you're gonna, take a 1 mile hike or a 2 mile hike. And one day you skip it because, something got in the way. Maybe you have, you know, sprained your foot. Who knows? Whatever reason ends up getting in the way. We're human and excuses do happen. That's normal. Is that we don't beat ourselves up and let those nasty internal messages get in our head and say, oh, well, you didn't do it today, so I guess you'll never do it again. Or, you know, just recognize that you missed it and you'll try again tomorrow. So, but a consistency is the key. Once you find a routine that works for you, putting it into your day is, and building on that is what's going to help. I tell my clients, starting with 5 minutes a day is better than nothing. So I'm going to share a technique with you. And it's one of the deep breathing exercises that I share to help release stress. And it activates the parasympathetic nervous system for an immediate stress relief. And when you feel it coming on, so when you feel stress coming on, and you can use this very frequently, you can use it as often as you want. The one thing about our breath is that it's ours. And a lot of times, people around you may not even recognize that you're doing it. But then there's other exercises that I teach inside the Anchor Resilience program, like the reset ritual, which is a way to keep stress from building up. I talk about the tidal release, which is a release pent up energy, overthinking and emotional overload, or the other one, anchor pause, which stops stress in its tracks and gives yourself a resilience roadmap that you can trust. So if these are things that you're interested in, please make sure that you look at all the links in the description and get in touch with me, because I would love to be able to have you learn more of those techniques. But we're going to go ahead and do the technique that I was talking about. And this is a deep breathing exercise, and I call it the breath buoy. But we're going to breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, release for 4, hold it for 4. And you're going to do that. You can do that a couple times, but on the last one, you will release it for 6. And if you really feel that stress building up, on the release, on that one that you release for 6, it could be a real big sigh. This is a technique that is also in somatic uh, techniques that are done in therapy practices, but it's really good for stress relief. So that's why I teach it as well. So we're going to go ahead and practice. So it's breathe in for 4, hold it, release. And you can do that a couple times, but I'm going to demonstrate the one when I said the 6. So breathe in for 4, hold it, and release for 6. And you can feel I felt my shoulders come down. You know, you can, a lot of times, if you are one of those people that kind of hold your stress, like in your chest just always feels heavy, like there's something, on it, then this is a really good one because it releases all of that. So put in the chat if that was effective in helping you feel more relaxed at this moment. All right. Thank you. And again, I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope this was helpful for you, all the learning about, techniques. But that breathing technique can be done put into your day, and there's so many more techniques that can be put right into your day that does not cost you a dime. It did not cost us anything to do that breath. And it took us no more than a couple minutes. So looking forward to seeing you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to talk about the power of self-love. So, go and enjoy the rest of the trainings today, and I'll see you tomorrow.